We've got a blast from the past here with Twist of Fate facing off against the artist formerly known as Heist. Our lead matchup is Gyarados against Machamp. Machamp's lead set is straightforward. It spams Dynamic Punch with a Lumberry or a Focus Sash attached. Custap Berry is also seen sometimes. It's viable, but it's more geared toward non-lead Machamp, whereas Sash and Lum fit on the lead set more because of how they let it square off against other common leads. Most notably, Lum is good against Roserade lead, and Sash lets Machamp live a hit and KO back against things like Specs Heatran with Overheat and Band-Aids up with Zen Headbutt. So, Gyarados, either a choice band set that comes swinging out of the gate with immediate pressure from its powerful waterfalls, very effective against common stall teams, or a lead-specific set of Lumberry with the moves Dragon Dance, Waterfall, Bounce or Stone Edge as the coverage, and then in the last slot, Substitute or Taunt. And what that last slot allows you to do is, in conjunction with Lumberry and Dragon Dance, you beat Roserade lead and put the pressure on immediately. However, the main reason to lead Gyarados is to get this exact matchup, Machamp. People like using Gyarados to beat Machamp because of its fighting resistance and Intimidate, but they started saying, well, why am I switching to Gyarados in the first turn when I could just lead off and get an immediate good matchup? It's not like Gyarados is bad against other common leads like Heatran, Tyranitar, Swampert if you've got Taunt, beats Roserade, can stop Empoleon from setting up rocks, and of course beating Machamp is really good. And you get to run that Roserade beating set because the same item you use to beat Roserade is the one you use to beat Machamp, since it'd be stupid to squander your good matchup with Dynamic Punch Confusion. So, now that we know that, we can examine what they're going to do. For Gyarados, the move is Waterfall pretty much no matter what set it is. If it's Choice Band, it's very obvious. And if it's the Dragon Dance set, then it would be kind of a waste to just Dragon Dance and then have to switch out as the opponent goes to Starmie or Rotom or a Grass type. Even by waterfalling into something that doesn't take a lot of damage from it, you can suss out their EV spread, and from that, maybe even some teammates. So I think attacking is definitely the move from Gyara. From Machamp, it depends on the set. If it's Stone Edge, you probably go for it, because you want Gyarados severely weakened. You don't have to worry about missing because of no guard, of course. Even at -1, you're still going to do a chunk. It's an offensive Gyara. If you don't have Stone Edge, then most people would switch. Some might go for Dynamic Punch just because they want to potentially mess up a Choice Band set, and they just want to burn the Lumberry. I mean, Lumberry is not just useful in the lead slot. There's a lot of status in DPP that can be aimed at Gyarados. Body Slam Jirachi, Spore Breloom, Will-O-Wisp Heatran, Thunder Wave from Blissey or Clefable. So, find out what set it is, burn the Lum if it has one, mess up the Bander if it has one. So, but yeah, switching is also quite a good option, especially if there's something like an offensive Suicune. And not switching against it could indicate perhaps a team not so confident against Gyarados, since it's not like Machamp is a throwaway lead. Machamp can do a lot of damage later in the game. So, let's finally get into it. So, Gyarados waterfalls, Machamp stays in, does less than half, so that's a very bulky champ. Most bulky champ are going to be running Lumberry, because when Machamp runs Sash, it doesn't need bulk, so it runs a lot of speed. And it's also not unlikely that this Gyara runs a lot of bulk and might be taking a decent chunk out of attack. We could slave away over the calculator if we wanted, but let's not do that. Let's just use our basic mental calcs that are going to be accurate enough for the purpose of this. And Machamp goes for Dynamic Punch, which doesn't do a lot. Considering it's -1, it's definitely a bulkier Gyarados, and it eats the Lumberry. So Machamp now, does it switch now that it knows it's not going to be threatening Banded Waterfall, which is really scary because a lot of teams skimp on the bulky water resists. Something like an offensive Starmie doesn't like CB Waterfall, for example. So is he going to stay in and press his luck? I mean, the waterfall from Heist is clear. It's mostly on ToF how he wants to respond to it. He does switch to Starmie. Waterfall does a pretty decent amount. Of course, we can't get an exact reading on it because we're not Heist, we don't know the EV spread. So with Starmie against Gyarados like this, then a common move here would be to go to Machamp again, because of how often something fat like Tyranitar or Blissey or Clefable might be as a response. It's also kind of risky because a decent response to Starmie might be something like Jirachi or even like a Roserade, so it's a move that might not work. So ToF decides to play it safe and Hydro Pump a potential Tyranitar switch in. That's the main one that you want to be hitting on the switch. You know, burn up a Pasho Berry and such to a KO if it's not Pasho. And Heist reads that he's going to go back to Machamp to try and catch the very obvious Tyranitar, since Tyranitar is incredibly common with Gyarados for exactly this reason. It traps Starmie and Rotom. And he goes for another Waterfall, doing a pretty mean chunk. So we're assuming offensive Starmie at this point. And a bulky Gyarados, because it's not taking much from Hydro either. It's taken 2 hits, even though resisted, and still is above half, without the help of leftovers. So this is another turn. It's very unlikely he manages to do that again. But the Machamp switch is still not guaranteed to work, because what if he responds with a bulky Stealth Rocking Jirachi, which is a perfectly valid Starmie switch in, and then you just are on the back foot necessarily when you could have just hit it. So Hydro Pump again is definitely very valid, since the Gyarados is not really that threatening. So, alright, let me collect my thoughts. Excuse me, I'm trying to say a million things at once. So, since the Gyarados is already weakened, I guess you could make the argument for for just attacking and making sure it doesn't do anything silly. But with a healthy team, it's very unlikely he just throws his Gyarados away when it could have defensive utility later. I mean, even as a sack, Gyara has Intimidate if it's not dying to rock. So, but he goes right for the Psychic. So that's a pretty bulky Starmie, or it's because most Psychic Starmie are going to be Hydro Psychic, Rapid Spin, Recover. So my mental calc was a bit off, and maybe that Gyarados had more attack than I first thought, and maybe the Machamp was taking out of attack. That's tough to gauge, but the Psychic definitely reveals at least a Recover Starmie, almost surely. So he's going to go for Hydro, misses, and gets crunched. So now we don't know anything about the T-Tar. We don't know Pasho, we don't know We don't know how bulky it is. If it's not Pasho, because Pasho would do a good job at disguising the true EV spread, especially since it's probably a defensive Starmie without a lot of special attack investment. So, Machamp comes back, and obviously ToF could not go to Machamp because Heist could very feasibly just pursue, since his Tyranitar was at full and in a position to eat 2 Hydros. And also, depending on how slow his Champ is, with that amount of bulk on it, I'm going to say slow, then he will get 2 KO'd on the switch. And Heist, if he did have Pursuit, he made the smart move knowing that Crunch would get him the healthiest Tyranitar out of it, especially since ToF can't really go to Machamp, and his team's still in good condition. So Crunch was a smart move. Hydro was a good move, and it was just unfortunate it didn't work out. However, now Machamp is looking on the menacing side. It's up to D-Punch now, if Gyarados is going to be Heist's response, because with Sand, it's going to be in range of a second Waterfall. But, yeah, Gyarados now has to contend with Sand as well. So, he does go to Gyara. It's up to the Confusion Gods. Of course, he's not obligated to stay in, but he goes for Payback, trying to hit something like a Gengar. That would be a great switch in at that point. So that was a very intelligent move from ToF. Not many players would have considered, hey, this kind of bulky Gyara, or this bulky offense Gyarados stuff, this stuff likes to have Gengar. If I were him, I'd go to it. I'm just going to Payback, and even if he goes to Gyara, then it's already weakened, and it's not banded, so I can switch into its attacks, and I'll do more damage to it than with D-Punch. So good move from ToF. A lot of players just click D-Punch there, and say, hey, it's D-Punch, so, 50% at worst. But so that was a very smart move. He gets rewarded a little too much with a crit, so now we've already got some hacks in the game. But that was a very smart move. Now, Heist's not going to have any problem revenging it. It just sucks to have Gyarados go for nothing, because with Intimidate, pivoting around Gyara is nice, because with how much D-Punch did earlier, 22, then, if he's banking on Confusion, he may as well go for D-Punch again, because with Confusion damage, Gyara would KO itself with Sand. But it wouldn't have been so bad to pivot Metagross into it, assuming ToF would go for Payback then. Or he could go for Waterfall. We'll never know. Anyway, Metagross comes out now, so Heist's definitely using a real slugger of a team. And with the bulky Machamp, Metagross is going to get outrun, and ToF responds with his own Metagross. Now, ToF pivots out and goes to Flygon on Earthquake, so Metagross has a reputation of really messing offensive teams up. It's tough to switch into. And so doing this kind of dance is symbolic of that. So the problem with Flygon is, unless it's banned, it's not killing Metagross. And we don't know which of Tyranitar or Metagross is going to be Heist Stealth Rocker. I would wager Tyranitar, because it can generally do its job while fitting Stealth Rocker on its moveset, while Metagross likes being able to just... It's not only can T-Tar do its job of checking stuff better with Stealth Rocker on its moveset, it's also that it can be switched into more easily, generally. So, whereas with Metagross, you want to be doing as much damage as you possibly can, because it's so hard to shrug it off. So you don't want to waste time setting up Stealth Rock. Tyranitar also has the option, or is good because it gets up Stealth Rock and doesn't invite Starmie in, so Stealth Rock is going to be sticking for a while, whereas with Metagross, some people will go to Starmie on it, and you just start having these obnoxious games of Recover, Earthquake, do I Boom, do I go to T-Tar, and it can get messy, whereas with Tyranitar, you put up the rocks, and then your Metagross comes in, and there's already rocks up. So that's your ideal scenario. But yeah, so Flygon without ban is not killing Metagross, not to mention some of them are Shuka Berry. And, but even then, I would say it's probably not going to be Choice Band Flygon. That set is very, very rare. So, and the reason you want to not have Stealth Rock on Meta is not just to attack immediately, it's because you have Bullet Punch. So in situations like these, then you can mash the Flygon, and then you can Bullet Punch. And then you can still take something later when Machamp comes back in. So, it's looking bright if Metagross can take down this Flygon. So, we don't know if it's Scarf or not. We see Fire Blast from Life Orb mix set, because Scarf has not run Fire Blast in a million years. And we see Aqua Berry, which is good on Metagross because it lets it stay in against Infernape and Heatran and just muscle through them. That's why Metagross is so good. And he just booms. So does that mean Metagross was hugely threatening? Flygon was hugely threatening and he didn't have the Mash Bullet Punch combination? Was that a Stealth Rocker? It's possible, for sure. But we don't know yet. So, yeah, so Flygon goes down, and so does Metagross. So that's more of a relief for ToF, generally, because Metagross is generally really annoying to switch into, as we just saw, of having to pivot Flygon in. And if it was Mash Bullet Punch, I think he would have been in a world of trouble. So now we see Mamoswine from Heist. Good move, since beats Machamp, and it beats Metagross. And then ToF reveals Scarf Metagross and Meteor mashes it into dust. That was tough to predict. That was really tough. Scarf Metagross is never something you can truly predict regularly. Maybe if the rest of the team was revealed. But he gets a big, big free kill there. Whereas since most people just assume some sort of attacker, if not the Stealth Rocker, and Mamoswine would just feast on it, but no, it gets scarfed. So now we got to start thinking about the end game and the Pokemon revealed on both sides and what they still may have, because that's how you win consistently in DPP. If you just click away, then if you just ignore this important part of the game, then the wins are elusive, or more elusive than they could be. So, we both see some kind of bulky offense. With Heist, he's very clearly going for that 2-for-1 style he likes. You know, we got Gyara to draw in stuff T-Tar takes advantage of. Meta does its thing. Mamo is big because it's got the big priority for Scarf Flygon, which is always annoying for offense. And it trucks a lot of stuff. And threatens KOs easily on things like Clefable and smashes Breloom, Heatran. Stone Edge baits in and messes up Gyarados. Yeah, so generally it's a big bruiser, so we're looking at that kind of team. Honestly, a Machamp of his own would not be weird at all, since, like, Metagross is very good at those 2-for-1s. Whereas with ToF, it's tough to say. He's got the mixed Flygon and the Scarf Metagross. I mean, he's got to have the rock somewhere, so that's the expected thing. But what is that Stealth Rocker? He's got to have some defensive integrity of his own. He's got to have some sort of answer to Scarf Flygon himself. Is Flygon going to be his only answer? That's risky, considering how easily it spams Earthquake right now. So it's being able to cover the common threats in the metagame, where so I think that point is clear. So Heist reveals Magnezone. So in the spirit of 2-for-1, Magnezone can do things like Custap with Endure to make sure it KO stuff. It can get a free kill on if there's ever a Skarmory, which is big alongside Mamoswine, because Mamoswine kills most teams except teams with Skarmory and Bronzong, and Magnet Rise Magnezone also handles Bronzong. But Magnezone takes his free kill against them, and then you have one less Pokemon you need to 1-for-1 or 2-for-1 your way through. So Magnezone definitely ensures this team achieves its goal very nicely. So, and there was no way you could really surmise, oh, let me go to Magnezone here just in case he's Scarf. I mean, I'm sure you could justify that, but in the heat of the game, you just can't. That's not just me saying, oh, well, you know, it's the pressure. You can't blame him for that. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying rationally, there's no way you can really extrapolate Scarf Metagross. And since you've already lost some key Pokemon, the Metagross thing of Heist Zone is so huge here because of it didn't do as much as that kind of team generally needs Metagross to do. So you got to assume things at some point. And it's not just assuming things for the sake of it, but because of those other events that put him in that bad position, then he can't afford to be switching around and checking for sets. He's got to be aggressive. Otherwise, he's just going to fall behind and lose no matter what. So I think the Scarf Metagross surprise was more a good call on ToF's end than a mistake on Heist's end. Absolutely. So at least he gets to respond with a KO, and Magnezone's going to be faster then and probably KO Machamp, almost surely actually. So it depends on these last two, and since we've got Gyarados down, we got Mamoswine down, a Flygon of ToF's own could be tough, but he's already revealed the Scarf. But I'm thinking more in terms of something like a Trick Room Bronzong, which loves Trick Scarf Metagross against Skarmory. And just messing up the defensive teams in general, because then Metagross itself runs wild, getting a clear shot at waters and whatnot. But another thing ToF has to handle somehow is, well, I was going to say Zapdos when I meant Electrics, but yeah, Electric, so he's got to respond to this somehow. He doesn't have a Flygon, so Tyranitar is very common on these teams for exactly that, setting up the rocks on the Starmie, much like this team very possibly could have. So it's Blissey. So he's got Blissey offense. Magnezone immediately explodes. Blissey puts up the late game rocks. Could be huge if there's a Dragonite last. Very possible on such a bruiser team. So the question is, did he have to explode? And I think that was a very hasty move because of you can't really know ToF's last yet. You know, it's probably not a Scarfer. Or almost surely not a Scarfer, thanks to the Scarf Metagross. I would be astounded if it were. And instead, it's probably something that has to pick up some defensive slack and also do damage in return. So the thing is that he has a healthy Tyranitar, and most Tyranitar sets are probably going to be pretty good at dealing with Blissey somehow, and even if it's T-Wave, then it's going to be taking some massive hits, and Machamp still isn't switching into Superpower, so something would be going down, so he could trade down into a situation where his last Pokemon, which assumedly is not Infernape, or something that has defensive slack. I mean, even Infernape would be fine because it outspeeds and OHKOs a lot. And we've already got Starmie down and Scarf Metagross down, so it's not unlikely at all that it's something like a Breloom that Infernape would just destroy. But basically, he got no value out of the Magnezone against the Blissey, Machamp, and Unrevealed when he very possibly could have with the threat of Tyranitar, or even better, Swampert. So Swampert comes in, collects its KO. It's Waterfall. We don't see leftovers. We don't know Choice Band or just some like sort of Lum or Rindo or Custap offensive set. This could also be the Stealth Rocker if it is a non-Choice Bander. But see, with Swampert, then that can switch in too and threaten KO, or tough to switch into at least, since Dragonite is not exactly eager to switch into T-Tar either, and having the Magnezone, which is very likely Custap Berry with Endure, would be very useful against almost any offensive Pokemon that he could have feasibly had in the last slot. And Dragonite is big here because, notice, it's fighting in ground resistances, which is big because you got to have that backup against Flygon. So with bulky Starmie recovering and Flygon and Blissey and Dragonite, you're generally okay. I mean, it's not the most ideal matchup, but you have the tools, especially since you have your own offense to execute to pressure Flygon's own team. What you need is to not just be absolutely floored by it. So now we see Dragonite come in. We don't know if it's Dragon Dance or Band or Mixed, but there's no real way to tell. It's with Mixed Flygon, you can say, oh, it should be Choice Band because it's Mixed Flygon, but that doesn't make sense. It could very feasibly be both. The way I would say it's probably Choice Band is because he wants Sleep Talk to punish Breloom coming in on Blissey. So, since Machamp is a bulky lump set, that won't last. And it's also slower, so just gets super powered. But Choice Band Sleep Talk Dragonite is a legitimate answer to Breloom, at least once or twice. So, and if he had the Magnezone here, that would help a lot. He would definitely appreciate it against these two last, since he was very possibly forcing a KO with one of Tyranitar or Swampert. So I think the boom was definitely hasty. And we see Outrage, and it's doing a ton to T-Tar. It's banded, and he's going to just... I mean, he wins no matter what now, because the Swampert is offensive with... so not a lot of bulk investment, if any. So if he gets 3 turn, he just dies, and if he gets 2 turn, he just sacks Machamp and comes back and outrages the Dragonite. Outrages with Dragonite. So we don't know if it's banned or if it has an ice move or not, because he could have just done anything. But yeah, so ToF is going to win this one, and I think this is a great game. Like, a lot of people clown this game because it was short and a lot of KO trading, but I think there was a lot of interesting things to consider here. I don't think it was a game to be mocked at all. I think as a matter of fact, this game was not only just an example of 2 great players doing great things. I mean, not to just make them sound elite because they're big names, but I did think that there was a lot of great stuff here. I mean, I just did go over how I think Heist made a mistake booming the Magnezone immediately, so obviously they're not infallible, but yeah, very good game. And yeah, so that's it. Or so I would have said, but we've got a secret second game here, another Heist game, this time against Tama. So, lead matchup, Jirachi, Machamp. Another Machamp. Well, lead Jirachi is these days most commonly some sort of Iron Head Body Slam set, Stealth Rock or sub. Those sets have really chased the special attacking Stealth Rock Jirachi sets that used to be popular out of the metagame. So, is Machamp just going to stay in and Dynamic Punch? Most people would say, well, yeah, or you could just go to your safe answer, and because most Jirachi are going to Iron Head first to put Machamp into range of being reasonably dealt with, since Machamp is a lot easier to deal with at sub 100% because a lot of attacks hit it for a lot of damage, but not quite 100%, if that makes sense. So, Iron Head first, don't get greedy with your rocks. So that's generally what most people do, and I think most players would just go to their Jirachi response to not lose any ground and potentially not do anything with Machamp. But it's really up to the player and how they want to do it. So Iron Head, flinch, Machamp goes down. Heatran comes in, Jirachi U-turns. That's unexpected. Dugtrio comes in. So, big thing there. That's pretty much never seen. I mean, it feasibly exists on a couple of teams, but it's not standard. You can't really predict it. So that was really excellently done by Heist. He had a plan for that lead matchup. That wasn't just random clicking. I think a big part of being good at DPP is knowing how stuff works so you can plan around it before rather than, oh, well, I think I'll do this in this game. I mean, that can work sometimes, but generally it's good to have some sort of plan. And this was very clearly the plan against Machamp users because Heatran is very commonly paired with Machamp. It's one of the most tried and true old combos, lead Machamp and stealth rocking Heatran. And that's the other thing I want to mention. Whenever you go to Dugtrio and you don't see leftovers on the Heatran, you're like, oh man, this better not be Scarf. But using a Scarf Heatran to respond to Jirachi that very commonly uses Substitute and Body Slam is generally a bad practice, generally not a good sign for the team. So he's giving Tama credit and saying, all right, you're not running Scarf Tran because that would be bad. So I'm going to take my free Dug, and it goes down. Not a Shuka Berry. Pasho is more common. So Gengar comes in. And Gengar with a free sub is generally pretty nasty, but Jirachi's at full health, and it's going to be pretty bulky, so he can handle it. But Heist goes to Heatran because he does not want to eat a Will-O-Wisp, which is very feasible on Gengar, because it turns things like bulky Jirachi and bulky Bronzong and even Spadef Scizor from just walling it eternally, like they do with the Sub-Split set, into just getting destroyed by Burn and Taunt for good measure. So he goes to that expecting the Will-O-Wisp because that no sense getting his Jirachi ruined. Tama makes a great move, prevents any Scarf Tyranitar from coming in, and it hits Jirachi just as hard as Shadow Ball. So he's aggressive and nails the Heatran, whereas otherwise he would have been in a bad spot. Well, if he subbed, he would have been fine, but he might not even be sub. He might be 4 attacks Life Orb. So, but leading off with Focus Blast is a smart move. Yeah. Definitely doesn't hurt to not lose your health. And he subs as Heist goes for Rocks. Good move. That was aggressive, but he figured, well, I'm already kind of behind. I gotta do something to get back in it. And it's reasonable that he might not have Rocks on Jirachi, especially since he's got this really bulky Heatran. And another move that Heatran might try to get away with is Protect, which is not even outlandish because you could say, oh, well, that's a 4-attack Gengar. Otherwise, why wouldn't he just sub up? So, I don't think that logic is airtight, but it's definitely possible to think that way. But although Stealth Rock is also reasonable as pivoting to Scarf Rotom on Focus Blast is semi-common. So I think what Heist was going for there was, all right, the thing is, Dugtrio learns Pursuit. So Dugtrio will trap Gengar if it comes in without a sub. And Heist just assumed, oh, he's just going to Focus Blast again. Let me get my Rocks in case he misses. But Tama makes a good move, protecting himself from the Dug and working off that Stealth Rock assumption. So very nicely done to him there. So now he's going to Protect. He's going to need a lot to get out of range, but it'll help. And now he goes to Latias. And Tama makes that move, predicting the Scarf Rotom, perhaps, which would have been obnoxious. But it doesn't quite kill Latias because Latias is bulky as hell. It's definitely got some investment, given it's a Life Orb Gengar, a sizable amount at that. So he Dragon Pulses. So thinking we're going to hit up the damage calc and go Shadow Ball, Latias. And yeah, that has a really nasty chunk of bulk because it did 79. So that requires a minimum of, let's just throw 216, 200-ish. So I'm going to wager that is a bulky Scarf Latias because the alternative, since it doesn't have leftovers, is that it's like a bulky, Specs Latias that won the speed tie. Yeah, I don't think so. It's Scarf. I mean, it could feasibly be something like Colbur, but Scarf makes sense. It cleans up well with Dugtrio, whereas something like a Specs or Calm Mind Latias alongside Dugtrio would still get picked off by something like Scarf Flygon, which is generally not good. But yeah, now Dugtrio claims victim number 2. And so Tom has definitely wiggled himself back into this game since he's taken a lot of percent off Heatran, and Latias is down, and he's got Machamp in for a freebie, meaning he's very possibly going to level the score at 4-4 here. But Machamp is down, meaning he's actually going to get picked off by Dugtrio if he kills off something else. And with Heatran down, that's generally good news for Jirachi. So we don't know if Heist's going to sack Heatran or something else. But he does have a Rotom as well. And Tama assumes, all right, well, Dynamic Punch is going to mess up something. Can't really fault him for that. How stupid would you feel if you paybacked Heatran and then it was like Spadef Explosion or something, which is very feasible. Heist has actually used that, which is why I'd even thought of it. And then you just, didn't pick up your free KO. At least make it 4-4 before it's 4-3, as opposed to, just being 4-3 and having him locked into Earthquake on top of that, rather than a double down, which has less information to make secure decisions off of, which is what you want. So Rotom comes in and he takes Machamp out. So people were saying Specs, and I was saying, maybe Specs, maybe Magnet, but it could have also just been a Sash Machamp. Sash Machamp is frail. That would have died to an unboosted Rotom Thunderbolt. We don't know. That's something only the players know. Although with bulky Scarf Latias, I gotta say, it's probably likelier that it's a non-Scarf Rotom. Although if he's really going for an offense-killing machine, then having both Scarfers would be really useful, especially with the amount of setup Dugtrio allows. So, and as said earlier in the video, Sash Machamp doesn't run a lot of speed, or doesn't run a lot of bulk. So he does get pursued. It doesn't show Colbur, so that's out of the way. But he's got Breloom in now. So we don't know what kind of Tyranitar this is since the Rotom switched. So we don't know if it's banned or not banned. Banned if it's boosted or not boosted. So he Fire Blasted Breloom, and it takes very little, and Heist goes for a Spore. So what this is saying is that's a very bulky Breloom, and it's not going to have a ton of attack investment there, because he's got special defense. That's rare on Breloom. I mean, not that it hurts, given how useful grass types can be against common special attacks, like water and even things like Shadow Ball. But it's not usually ever seen on, a couple EVs don't hurt on Breloom, but that did like nothing. So I think it's a combination of a little bit of Spadef bulk and not a very special attack invested T-Tar. Since when Skarmory started running physical defense again, then a lot of reason for special attack investment on T-Tar went down. So that does nothing. He Spores instead of using another attack, or just attacking it, like most people assume Mach, Seed Bomb, Filler, a Superpower, or Focus Punch. Because Lum Tyranitar is quite rare now. It's all about Pasho. Sometimes Custap, sometimes Chople for Gengar, and Mach Breloom, actually. But it's, Lum is very... It just doesn't do a ton against the metagame right now. So, good assumption. And he goes for Leech Seed, and he's getting out of range for that while harassing any switch-in, since this team with Machamp and Heatran and Gengar, they got a lot of weak points, and not something many grass types would really... not something many grass types would really patch up, since they're just making the issue versus something like Scarf Flygon worse for the most part. And even if it does end up hitting a grass type, that's just another Pokemon Jirachi is going to beat. The Jirachi endgame is what he's going for. And he does manage to get the leech off on T-Tar, which stays in, burns a turn, and then he throws out the Force Palm, potentially paralyzing any Dragonite that might want to come in. Infernape avoids it, and Breloom's now healthy, but he's got to sack something to the Ape now, unless it's Scarf, but I got a little bit ahead of myself. Let me go back. So, he just threw out a Force Palm, which not really seen ever. Don't think I have ever seen it on Breloom, in fact. And Paralysis can be good, and it worked. It's a nice, consistent fighting move to throw out if you're running a defensive Leech Seed set. Mess up stuff like Gliscor. and Dragonite. So he got the leech since Tyranitar was just gonna not be in range for the next Fire Blast anyway, or Breloom was not gonna be in range for T-Tar's next Fire Blast. So then he just threw out the Force Palm, figured if he's gonna let me have T-Tar, let me have it. Nothing else is gonna switch into this Force Palm without at least the risk of paralysis. Since Gengar's already down, there's not gonna be another Ghost type. There's not gonna be a Rotom there. So he protects, and then he takes his time and switches to Heatran. If it's Scarf Fire Blast, he doesn't lose anything. If it's mixed, then he's just going to have to beat it with Dugtrio anyway. You know, not enough. I mean, he can protect here, but it's not wise to... He's going to have to accept that Dugtrio is going to lock itself into a move again, and potentially both his Scarfers are gone now. So he's really got to think about whether that's what he wants to do, or if he wants to try and protect it from this range. He would go Breloom on this one, 18, and protect... 12, and then he can, you know, sack Heatran, and then he's fine, not giving free setup to something like a DD Knight, which would be disastrous. So, more in the vein of figuring out the opponent's team, what could he possibly have last? Again, we got to look at what's he weak to, and right now, with the 2 fires and not a water resist in sight, and you know another Pokemon weak to ground, and not resisting, so he's got a lot of holes, and it's like, what one Pokemon could patch all these? He definitely made some concession in the team builder somewhere, and that makes it harder to predict. And he doesn't really have the Pokemon to take advantage of this team building hole, like something like a Gyarados would be amazing. Although I'm sure the very likely Pasho Heatran blowing up on waters for Infernape, or blowing up or HP grassing the Swamperts for Ape would be good. Or that's probably part of the strategy, but, you know, it's more than just water. That was just an example. So he's going to decide, you know what, I'm going with the Doug strat. I'm not going to try to protect around, because something like a Dragonite here would make his team absolutely destroyed by Suicune. I mean, he's got, you know, the 2 Pokemon faster. These 2 can very possibly be Pasho, but at the same time, you know, it's just probably not a good look. So he's going to go to Doug, and he's going to Earthquake. And if DD Knight sets up right now... I mean, honestly, maybe we're not giving it enough credit. And I botched the reveal a little early. But maybe we're not giving the Jirachi enough credit, since if it's DD Knight, then Jirachi, it's bulky, probably can live a hit, probably can Iron Head, and then there's Protect on top of that. Hell, Dugtrio might even have Sucker Punch, you know, Force and E-Speed. And then if he can handle the DD Knight with the Jirachi, then that Earthquake was fine. And and then the T-Tar will just probably lose, so he's good to go, right? So that's what you would think, but it's not something that resists ground like most everyone expected. I mean, people were saying Bronzong, that would be nice, but he said, you know what, I can handle whatever he's going to throw at me that's going to lock itself in an Earthquake. And that's the less risky maneuver, as opposed to trying to protect stall the Loom and potentially losing important Pokemon, rather than cutting your losses and knowing you'll be fine. And the Metagross is in. And this is the second Scarf Metagross. And it takes out the Dugtrio, but that just almost surely wraps up Heist's win, because now it can't break through Jirachi and Breloom. We don't know the Jirachi set, but assuming just a Body Slam, whatever, is going to take down the 2. So, I mean, something like if he switched to Tyranitar and Iron Head and back to Metagross on, what's it called? If he switched to Tyranitar and Fire Punch and Metagross on Iron Head and tricked the Jirachi or something stupid. I mean, it's still not looking very good, especially because if he goes to Tyranitar, he can feasibly U-turn out and be just fine. Because it might be in KO range. He might just go for Iron Head. It's still not a good way, not favorable, and Tom was trying to mash through with mash, but it's just not working. So too little, too late. And I mean maybe the Fire Punch back to meta solution would have worked, but I mean, even then he could just U-turn and live the Earthquake by miles, go to Breloom, and then he's still going to be fine, because Breloom's going to live a hit and Leech Seed and Force Palm, and yeah, and he's locked in Earthquake. So this was pretty much wrapped up as soon as the Metagross revealed the Scarf. So, and he couldn't exactly lock in an Earthquake either, because then Loom comes in. So yeah, this was another excellent game. I enjoyed it. I think the teams were hella interesting. And yeah, I think that's about that. This time it's over for real. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the surprise bonus. And I will catch you next time.